أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير ثم أما بعد والحمد لله. Respected brothers and sisters, anyone that's joining us online as well, welcome to you all, and Jazakumullah khairan for joining us once again for our weekly Islamic Studies class, live streamed from here in Darul Masjid in Shadwell, East London. I would hope that inshallah, that I know a lot of people watch this class online and we get like about 400 to 500 views on it on a weekly basis at the moment, which is quite a lot for us because we're a small channel, a small masjid, we're growing. But in terms of physical attendance, there's nothing like it. So inshallah, those who are local, I encourage you to try and attend physically as much as possible. Of course, if you're far away and you cannot, then that's understandable. Today, inshallah, we'll be jumping on to the next segment. There are some small bits here and there, but what I will do is I will not go into all of the details, because at the end of the day, this is a Islamic studies for beginners, and we'll try to keep it as necessary and the requisites and things that are kind of basic. So we've covered that which breaks your salah. We've covered also that which is disliked in salah. I want to talk quickly about praying sometimes when you're riding, and this is important because sometimes you might end up in a car and you need to pray in a car or an aeroplane and so on, or on a ship. So this is important. So let's read the section on page number 90 from this book, Ascent to Felicity, which says praying on a riding animal. He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, obligatory fard. So obligatory means fard, and mandatory is wajib. Obligatory and mandatory in English are quite synonymous, but this translator decides to use obligatory to mean fard, which means super important, and wajib is as mandatory, which is also very, very important, but not to the level of fard and wajib. And we spoke about the difference between fard and wajib many times. Either way, they're both very important and they're not to be left out. So obligatory and mandatory prayers, i.e. fard and wajib prayers, are invalid if performed on a riding animal or in a vehicle, as is a prostration of a recital if the verse was recited or heard before mounting the animal. Which means to say that nafil prayers and sunnah prayers could potentially be prayed on a riding animal or on a vehicle, and the Prophet ﷺ did so. As for obligatory prayers, fard and wajib prayers, meaning your daily 5 salawat or witr, or any other wajib salah for that matter, then that would not be valid in a vehicle or a riding animal according to this opinion. So what does that mean? 301 states, if however, of course now he said your salah, if it's fard or wajib, would not be valid, nor would a sajda tilawa for you to perform it while you're riding on an animal or in a vehicle, except in case of necessity. So we have the asl and then the exception, the rule and its exception. Except in the case of necessity. 302. In a case of necessity, the obligatory fard prayer and the mandatory wajib prayer may be performed by head movements while mounted. If possible, one must stop the animal and direct it towards the qibla. Otherwise, if one cannot stop it, such as due to fear of an enemy, one may pray towards whichever direction the animal is facing, even if opposite the qibla and even if while moving. So generally speaking, I can't say, okay, I'm going to pray salah, but I'm going to pray in the car on my way to Birmingham. So you're there, but you can easily park up on the service station and you decide not to. Do you not understand that salah has got specific commandments like sujood, like ruku', like qawma, like tashahud? These are seriously important mandatory positions, as you've covered the fara'id of salah and the preconditions of salah, facing the qibla, facing the qibla and so on. You can't just chuck all of that out the window and say, I'm going to pray in a car just because you feel like it, because you're feeling lazy, or even if you may be traveling, unless you have a case of necessity. What's a case of necessity? Necessity is known as darura. Darura is where it's probably quite impossible for you to pray, or that your life is at danger or something like that. So an example is you get in the airplane and they say you can't pray in the back. You can't stand and pray. You must remain seated, sir. Otherwise they will report you to the authorities and you'll get in trouble. In that case, yes, it is indeed a necessity for you to pray on your seat. Because you have no other choice. What, you're supposed to break the law now? No. So you're here in majboor. You have no choice but to pray in your seat in your airplane. Or argument's sake, if you happen to be on a train or on a submarine, Allah protect us all, and you are not allowed to move from that seat, you're not allowed to stand up, you have no space. You have no space to even stand up. Then you can and you should pray with head movements in your place of sitting. But I hope we have understood how absolutely fundamental it is, therefore, that we should pray our salawat as we should, with the arkan and the fara'id and the wajibat, with the standing and the ruku' and the sujood. That can't be obliterated just because of a person's laziness or a person's lack of planning. So now, I want to talk to you guys about something quite important. In the Hanafi school of law, okay, and this is, no, we haven't come to that in a moment, we'll come to it in a minute, inshallah. In the Hanafi school of law, as we'll come to soon, you are not allowed to join between prayers even when you're traveling. Meaning, you can't pray Dhuhr and Asr together and Maghrib and Isha together, Jam' Mu'akhar or Muqaddam, in the Hanafi school of law, because they are very, very clear that inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minin kitaban mawquta, as the ayat in the Quran, that you must pray each and every single salah in its original time. أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل وقرآن الفجر. And the ayat and the ahadith that make very clear to us what are the times of salah are there. And the Quran says you have to pray salah on time. Quran says it. And so therefore, for you to join between prayers in the state of safar is a separate mas'ala. But here, where there may be a necessity, you will see a similar kind of ruling. I'm jumping to the next part a bit early, but bear in mind that praying on a riding animal, praying in a vehicle, praying in a train, praying in an aeroplane, praying in a whatever vehicle, where you cannot fulfill your physical obligations of salah, is not allowed unless in a case of necessity. Okay, such as a muddy terrain, fear of a robber, one may descend or stop, or inability to remount after descent. So you're in a very bad terrain, you are in fear of an enemy. If you stop and pray, then khalas, you're finished, they will attack you or something. Or that you cannot get back up again onto your riding animal because certain animals require assistance for you to. If you get down, you can't get back again. That's a darura, that's a haja, that's a darura, that's a necessity for which, okay. If a carriage on a camel is made stationary and connected to the ground by means of wooden stick or the like, one may pray in it standing, as it takes the legal ruling of the ground. Does that make sense to you guys? Means, say for example, let's take the example of aeroplane. If the aeroplane is floating in the sky, okay, and okay, no, let's stick to the example that they gave. Okay, for example, if you are on a carriage inside a camel, you know, camels have a carriage on the top, or a horse, or an elephant sometimes. Elephant or a camel has a carriage and has a little mini house. You can't pray on that while it's moving. But if it becomes stationary and the pillars are made like, you know, firmly on the ground, and then you can stand and pray, then that's fine. Because you've basically made it into a floor. You've made it into a floor which is attached and backed up and supported by sticks, which are the pillars. So in a similar light, if say for example, if someone was able to stand and pray in the plane, then that would have been fine anyway. Even more so if they are on the ground, landed, and now the wheels have attached to the ground and they are praying standing. This is completely fine. There's no ishkal on there whatsoever. Even if they were to pray in the sky, but while they are able to fulfill the arkan, that would also be permissible. Okay, according to, if one is on an animal or a vehicle and outside city limits, you may pray voluntary prayers, even emphasize sunnahs by head movements. In such a case, any filth on the saddle or stirrups is excused. So now, if you happen to be, normally your sunnah and your nawafil also, you should pray as you would do with your ruku' and sujood, yeah? We've established that. But say for example, you're outside, you're on a musafir, you're traveling. If you're traveling and you happen to be on a riding animal, you happen to be on a car, you happen to be on a vehicle, you happen to be on a train, you happen to be on a plane, you happen to be on a submarine, a lot of it, you're allowed to pray your sunnah and your nafal without any problem. Even if there isn't an excuse, you can pray your sunnah and your nafal with head movements. In summary, wajib and fard, you cannot pray in sitting down or while you're not able to fulfill the obligations and the ruku' and sujood unless there's an excuse. But for sunnah and nafal, you are allowed. According to our school of thought, it is not valid to perform a ritual prayer while walking. You can't pray salah according to Hanafi school law while walking. In general, because there are some stories from Sirah, like for example, one Sahabi was praying while he was running and in the battlefield. So this is taken as an exceptional circumstance in which does not take the rule perhaps. And so therefore, as a general rule, it would not be permissible for you to pray while you're walking. In general, for voluntary prayers, even if able to stand, one may pray sitting, yet while facing the Qibla, both at the onset as well as in the middle of the prayer. In general, for voluntary prayers, so now this is the rule. For fard, you have to stand and all of that stuff. But for voluntary prayers, for nafal, salah, you're allowed to sit down and pray, even without an excuse. Does that make sense to you? For nafal and nafal salawat, you're allowed to sit and pray, even if you don't have an excuse. Fard, you have to have an excuse. But for nafal, you have to have an excuse to sit. You don't have to have an excuse for sitting down and praying, except that you will lose half the reward. You will lose half the reward. Now suppose someone decided, I want to pray some nafal salah, and they started while standing. I have, mashallah, intention, I want to pray long raka'ah of nafal. Mashallah, you've done really well. First raka'ah, it took 20 minutes, 30 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. Second raka'ah, I got a bit tired. Too tired. Does he have to remain standing? He doesn't have to. He can sit down for the second raka'ah. If it's nafal, not fard. So nafal is a bit more flexibility, and you're allowed to sit down for that salah if you want to. But of course, the ajr for standing is more. If one prays obligatory or mandatory prayers in a ship while sitting, even without an excuse, it is valid, yet he must turn towards the Qibla every time it changes direction. So a ship is taking a slightly different ruling. However, he must perform the bowing ruku' by bending his back and prostration sujood on the ground. He may not simply pray with head movements without any excuse. Meaning, in summary, if you guys want to pray with head movements only on a ship or a riding animal, etc., in its form of transportation, then there must be a valid excuse. Prayer of the traveler. I'm going to inshallah read this section, then I want to share with you an interesting thought. The minimum, so the prayer of the traveler, we're all familiar with the prayer of the traveler, right? Sometimes when you're traveling, if there's a certain amount of kilometers or miles that you're traveling beyond, then you are excused by Sharia to pray and allowed to pray a bit less than usual. And why is that? Because the Prophet ﷺ has made it. In fact, in the Hanafi school of law, if you are traveling, then you should pray the shortened prayer and not the longer prayer, because it's a gift from Allah, and it would be arrogant for you not to accept that gift of Allah. So we take ease. Allah makes it easy, we take the ease. So we're talking about now the prayer of the traveler, Salatul Musafir, or Qasr Salah, as is also called. The minimum period of travel whereby a certain legal ruling take effect is 3 days on a camel. So basically, when we say 50 kilometers, or 50 miles, is based upon the general traveling speed of a camel. A camel will be able to travel for 3 days. Traveling for 3 days would give it 50 miles. Because they're quite slow, you see. They're not running at very fast speeds. 309 says, that is the least distance of a travel for a certain ruling to take place, take effect is a, sorry, let me start again. I'm mumbling today. That is, the least distance of travel for certain rulings to take effect is a camel journey of 3 days, which is roughly about 48 miles, 77 kilometers. So remember this number, 48 miles. I say 54 for rounding up for a safe distance. 48 miles. Reasonable estimation of this distance is sufficient. Meaning, so for example, you don't know exactly if you're 48 miles or if you're not. Then you have to make some sort of estimation because you've been walking, because you're traveling by camel and you have no knowledge exactly. So in that case, you're allowed to make a reasonable estimation. Okay. One does not have to be certain, as it is an approximate. Those ruling including the following become, so now we understand the minimum period of travel whereby certain legal rulings take effect is 3 days on the camel. Thus, when a person has left his place of residence, intending to travel at a medium pace to a place that he will reach in at least 3 days, then he does not fast in Ramadan. Meaning if you're musafir, meaning if you're traveling 48 miles or more, and you've left also your city limits. Okay? What are your city limits? You can say London, but according to fuqaha, they say if you've left your borough, if you've left your hayy, your borough, so if you leave Tower Hamlets with the intention of traveling for 50 miles or more, let's say for example Northampton, for example Eastbourne, Southampton, Birmingham, Bristol, all of these areas which are 50 miles, maybe even Reading, I don't know if Reading falls beyond 50 or 48. But these areas which are just, outside your city, you're traveling, we have an intention to travel 50 miles. If you're going to Italy, then no problem whatsoever. If you're traveling to Bangladesh, then of course, while you're traveling to Russia, no problem. If you're traveling to any other Morocco, Egypt, then during that travel, you're definitely a traveler. So you have an intention to travel for more than 50 miles. Then now, mashallah, you made the preparations and you've left Tower Hamlets. Zuhr time comes in as you've now arrived in Chingford, Chigwell, Harrow, Hounslow, okay, one of these outer boroughs, Newham even, argument's sake. But you're on the way to traveling more than 50 miles. Since you've left Tower Hamlets, you are allowed to start your discount as a musafir. Okay, your area, your borough, if you have the intention of traveling for more than 50 miles, then the moment you leave your borough, you're a musafir. And so therefore, the discounts come in, whether it be for salah or for Ramadan. Ramadan is a big one for fasting. Because a lot of people, and we've said this in the rules of Ramadan very clearly, if you remember. Some people say, okay, I'm traveling today, so I'm not going to fast. But my guy is traveling at 12 p.m. There he is having breakfast at 9 a.m., full English breakfast, and he's traveling at 12. He's thinking, I'm musafir today. What are you doing? That's not how it works. You are only excused from fasting if you are already traveling. If you're already in the state of traveling. So, which means is, someone prayed Tarawih in Darul East London and enjoyed his Tarawih. Afterwards, had a bit of, whatever, and he set out for a journey. By the time it was Fajr, entry of Fajr time, i.e. by the time the fast started, he's already left Tower Hamlets. Khalas is gone. Mishi is gone. He's left the borough by the time it's the beginning of the fast. For that person, he doesn't have to fast. Why? Because he's already traveling when the fasting day began. As for you, the fasting day began, you're supposed to fast from that time onwards. If you left afterwards, that's a separate mas'ala. This is a very important mas'ala, and a lot of people, they forget that. And they think that I'm going to be traveling, so therefore I don't have to fast, and they make that mistake. So, and he shortens the 4 rak'at of the obligatory prayers. He is not allowed to pray them as 4. He is not allowed to pray them as 4 rak'ats. He has to pray them shortened, because that is the rule of the traveler. If he does pray the 4 rak'ats and sits in the first sitting between the second and the third rak'ah, then the prayer is valid, although he has committed a serious error. Otherwise, it is invalid. He may not shorten any prayers aside from the 4 rak'ah. So you can't say, I want to shorten any other prayers except for that which is 4. What's 4 rak'ah? Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha. You cannot shorten the Fajr, because it's already short, it's already 2. Nor can you shorten the Maghrib, because there's no such thing as 1.5 rak'ah. Nor can you shorten the Witr, which is also 3 rak'at. Only the 4 rak'at is shortened. If he is at a halt on the journey, while in a state of rest, he should pray the emphasized sunan. If you're already traveling, then you don't have to pray the sunnahs. But if you have time and if you're able to rest, khalas, pray the sunnahs as well, which are the sunan mu'akkada of Fajr, of Dhuhr, of Maghrib, of Isha, along with the obligatory. So if he is at a halt on the journey, while in a state of rest, he should pray the sunan mu'akkada as well. Otherwise, he may also leave them. It's encouraged, but you don't. You can also leave them, but you should try. If you have the ability, then pray the sunnah as well. Once he reaches a city or a village and intends on staying there for at least 15 full days, he must complete the 4 rak'ah. So now, you are a musafir if you have an intention to travel for 50 miles or more, and the moment you have left the city limits, i.e. your borough. How many days are you musafir for? If you're musafir for, as long as you're traveling for less than 15 days. If you decide to stay somewhere for 15 full days, 15 days you're going to stay there. Khalas, you're not musafir anymore. You have now become a muqim, according to the Hanafi school of law. There are ikhtilafat between the other school of law about the number of days. And also, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah has got a certain opinion which is different from this. I'm quite familiar with that. But like I said, we're teaching based on this particular syllabus, and we'll keep it simple for our beginners and our new learners of these rules and regulations. Does that make sense, guys? If you're staying for 15 days or more, you become muqim. So you have to pray full time, full salah. So if you're staying 15 full days, he must complete the 4 rak'at obligatory prayers rather than shortening them. He must also fast on Ramadan. Otherwise, if he's still on a journey or residing somewhere other than his normal place of residence for less than 15 days, then he does not complete the 4. Meaning, if it's 14 days or less, then you are musafir. The journey of a traveler ends upon entering the city limits. Just like your journey started when you left the city limits. You left Tower Hamlets, you're musafir because you're traveling more than 50 miles. Similarly, your journey ends when you enter into Tower Hamlets. You can't say, I'm still in I'm just in far away in Tower Hamlets. I still haven't reached Shadwell, so I'm not home yet. No, your journey ends when you enter into your borough. If the traveler prays behind a resident imam within the prayer time, his prayer is valid and he must pray the full 4 rak'ats. Okay, if you're praying behind an imam who's praying the 4, if the musafir, you're musafir, but you're praying behind an imam who's praying the full 4, what should you do? After 2 rak'ats, say salam and go? No. You have to join the imam and complete the 4. However, if you are the musafir and you're the imam, like we saw recently when the shaykh came, what did we do? We said to the shaykh, said salam at the end of the 2 rak'at, and we carried on afterwards. Does that make sense, right? Sheikh Ibrahim Kazi, when he came, the Qari from Pakistan, when he came, just before the Egypt trip. Okay, in the opposite scenario, the prayer of a resident follow. So I just said that basically. I'm not going to complicate it. So if you're following an imam who's a muqim, he's praying 4, you must follow the imam. However, if you're following an imam who's praying 2 rak'at because he's musafir and you're a muqim, you're not a traveler, then you have to complete the 2 rak'at. And the imam would generally say, he'd make an announcement before that, listen, I'm a traveler, guys, I'm praying 2 rak'at and I'll say salam. And this is no problem. There's no problem with the imam praying 2 rak'at and giving salam. And he should also make an announcement after the salam saying, I am traveler, you guys complete your salah. A missed 4 rak'ah prayer on a journey is made up as 2. Now, for example, you are in a journey and you have made some qada. You missed some salah in your journey. Now you've come home and you're making up salahs for the journey time. You missed salah in the journey time. You're making them up afterwards. How many rak'at do you pray them as? You pray them as discounted. Because you missed them as 2. You missed them as discounted, so you pray them as discounted. Opposite scenario. If you're doing qada of your salahs from while you were resident, while you're traveling, how many rak'at do you make them up as? Full. So when you make up the salah, you pray it based upon the scenario that you're in at that time. If you're musafir, then you make it up as that amount. And if you're muqim, then you make it up as that amount. Otherwise, someone's going to say, okay, I've got a year of qada. I'm going to go somewhere for a month, for a week, and do them all as 2, and khalas. Finito. No, you have to make them up based upon the time that you missed it. And yes, you have to make up your missed salahs. This is the opinion. This is the stronger opinion. And this is the rajih opinion. Okay? That if you've missed your salahs in your previous days of ghafla, you are a Muslim. You are a Muslim. You are a Muslim. But you are ghafil, you are unaware, you are heedless, you are committing sin, you are leaving a salah. Then you became, Allah guided you, mashallah, you have to make qada of them. If you were a non-Muslim before, then you accepted Islam, then you don't have to make up for all of those years. Because when you accept into Islam, you have a clean slate and everything previously forgiven. Does that make sense? Okay. A traveler in a permissible journey and one in a journey of disobedience are equivalent according to the legal. Meaning, trying to say to you that if you're a traveler, then the rule comes into play. And this is another mas'ala that comes in. Say, for example, someone's traveling to steal. Are they still allowed to do qasr? According to Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah alayhi, in his opinion, Wallahu a'lam, as far as I remember, is that in the other school, basically, If you're traveling to commit a sin, then why should you get a discount? You're traveling to commit a sin, mate. So why should you get a discount? So you have to pray full. But according to the Hanafi school of law, if you're traveling to commit a sin, then you're still a traveler. Allah didn't say that if you're traveling and you're going to do a good deed, then you're allowed to make a discount. He never made that specification. He said if you're a traveler, then you're allowed to. وإذا ضربتم في الأرض فليس عليكم جناح أن تقصروا من الصلاة. وإذا ضربتم في الأرض, when you're traveling on the earth, فليس عليكم جناح أن تقصروا من الصلاة. So it's no problem if you do salah half, if you do qasr. Allah didn't say that you should be in a rewarding journey or a neutral journey. He said any journey. So that's the evidence. So nonetheless, the point is don't travel for sin and then shorten your salah. That's not the point. The point is that you're allowed to shorten your prayer. There's a section that says sick person's prayer and being absolved of the prayer. I'm not going to go into that now because I want to save that. Take it nice and slow. Take it easy, inshallah. Okay, so now what I want to talk about is, see guys, we spoke about praying on an aeroplane before. Okay, and most airlines, I don't know, maybe Saudi Arabian airlines have an exception that you're allowed to stand and pray. But then even if you're allowed, then how are you going to do wudu and stuff? It's a bit complicated. So in the Hanafi school of law, originally, you shouldn't be joining between prayers. Okay? But that rule also says, unless there's a case of necessity. And you can, for the Hanafi fellows who are, very strict in this opinion, you can refer to maybe Ala Sunan or other books, and inshallah you'll find that si'ah or sa'a in that mas'ala. In the case of necessity, you're allowed to join. In the case of necessity, you're allowed to join between prayers. And that's in the Hanafi school I'm talking about. So, look, say for example you're in the airport and it's Zuhr time and you know you're going to have a 5, 6, 7 hour journey. You can pray Jama'. You can pray Zuhr and Asr right now. You can. And what would be the problem? The problem is that you have borrowed from another madhab. You've borrowed from the opinion of the other schools of law which have allowed for you to join between prayers. And we also know that in the case of necessity, you're allowed to borrow from the madhabs. Okay? And in fact, does it have to be a case of necessity for you to borrow from other madhabs or not to do talfiq? That's a separate mas'ala I don't want to get into right now. If you're in an airplane, if you're in an airport, you're about to go on a flight, you can join prayers. I'm not saying you can as a hukum, I'm saying potentially, in theory, you can. What would be the harm of that as a Hanafi? That you are borrowing from another school of law. Alternatively, you cannot pray now. You can pray Dhuhr only. But then you can pray Asr on the plane. What's wrong with praying on the plane? What's wrong in praying on the plane is, first of all, you're going to be sitting and praying. You're not going to be fulfilling your arkan. Second of all, you're not going to be facing towards the Qibla in most cases, because the chance of you facing the Qibla is a lesser percentage than the chance of you not facing the Qibla. Third of all, to do wudu and etc. is a big fuss. It's problematic. It's difficult. So these three issues come together, the fact that you're not going to fulfill the arkan of salah, and the fact that you're not going to be facing qibla, and of course the difficulty of wudu maybe is not a big issue, but it is still a notable issue. These are problems of praying on the plane, okay? On the train is maybe different, but I'm talking about on plane. So these are challenges you have to face if you decide to pray on time. Furthermore, okay, there's another issue as well, knowing the time of prayer. Because when you're on a plane, it's always complicated to know exactly what time, where you are, what time of prayer is in that country. There's a lot of haraj that comes in. So these are 3 or 4 challenges you have to face up to if you want to pray. If you want to be strict on the Hanafi school of law, which is that when you're traveling, you have to pray each salah on time. But if you'd borrowed from the other school of law and prayed in Jama', meaning you brought it forward, you prayed Zuhr and Asr, Zuhr time, and Maghrib and Isha, Maghrib time, then you didn't have to face all of these problems. Instead, the difficulty they had to face was they had to borrow from another school of law, which is Jaiz Mu'tabar, and it's one of the serious and authentic schools of law. Do you see what I'm trying to say to you? Sometimes I have seen, based on traveling, and based on family situations, especially if you're traveling with sisters, with women, with your wife, with women folk, for them to do wudu and pray and all of that, find a place, it's a lot more difficult. Okay? So for that reason, I'm telling you what I do. You don't have to follow me. But I'm just telling you what I do, and I'm sharing because if it makes your life easy, and if it helps you to maintain your salah, because a lot of people just say, I'm not going to pray then. They're on the plane, they're sat down, they're eating, they're stuck in the seat, they're maybe sitting on a window seat, they have to go through 3-4 people just to go and do wudu and come back all wet. They'll be like, what's this guy doing in the toilet? He's taking so long. What's all that noise? All of that haraj, right? I'm not saying for you to be scared about being a Muslim. Now, I'm talking about the other issues that I've just noted now as well. All of these issues you have to face. So now, if you are traveling, my recommendation is, if it's going to help you to pray properly, with your arkan and everything, full khushu' and khudu'. So I do this. So I'll tell you a real life situation. When I go to Egypt, I usually take the 3 p.m. flight. It's a convenient time. There's 2 flights, 3 p.m. and there's 10:30 p.m. I think they changed slightly. That's ultimately the direct flight. If I get the 3 p.m. flight, then Asr is going to be definitely in the airplane. Okay, Asr is going to be in the airplane. So what do? I pray Zuhr and Asr in Heathrow. I jump on the plane, and then when I land in the airport, I will try to pray my Maghrib as soon as I land. If I am unable to, then I will pray, obviously, inshallah, as soon as I can. So, do you see, what I'm trying to say to you is, extreme levels of rigidity sometimes to restricting yourself to a particular madhab sometimes can actually make a person miss the salah. If that's a situation, then you need to calculate, and you have to say, you know what, praying salah is more important than missing it completely. I might have some people angry at me because of what I just said. But I'm trying to make the lives of our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters easy for you to fulfill your obligation of salah, inshallah. I hope that makes sense. Are there any questions?
So I have a question. So when I went in Italy, I read somewhere that you can pray 2 rakah even if you are praying behind an imam. So that's why I followed. That's why I did. So I went to pray behind an imam and I prayed 2 rakah.
And then he said salam.
Salam, yeah. Would that prayer be valid, or?
I think you should repeat that prayer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, question. So what's the actual problem of actually borrowing from different schools of thought?
No, basically what happens is, so you're taking me into the mas'ala of, the joining or borrowing. Borrowing from, it's not encouraged generally. Do you know why? Because otherwise you make someone follow their desires. It can lead to that. Because if someone starts picking and choosing from other madhabs, and you're going to choose all the easy, then what happens is you start becoming a follower of your desires. That's one issue. Another issue is, sometimes you keep on borrowing from other schools. You know what happens? Sometimes it can happen that someone is mixing between opinions, and then the mas'ala, the issue itself becomes incorrect. Argument's sake, I'll give you an argument. For example, someone in nikah says, I want to borrow from different schools. So they're Hanafi. So they say, for example, for the bride, she doesn't have to have a wali in the Hanafi school of law. So the bride doesn't have a wali now. You don't have to necessarily announce the entire wedding according to some other school, some other opinion. You can fix the mahar to a particular amount. Do you see, if you start mixing, then at the end result is that someone's having a very private wedding, and it's becomes like a joke. It becomes like a joke like that. That can happen. That doesn't always happen, but it can happen. Having said that, this is what the ulama say, and other things why you shouldn't mix and match, because every school of law is based upon certain rules and regulations, certain origins, certain things that support it. So when you mix and match, you can mess up the origins. It's not the origin. You can mess up the principles, the usul and etc. That's what's said.
Could you potentially contradict yourself?
It's better, basically. Look, it's better for you to follow one school of law. It's better. I'm not going to say it's fard or it's wajib. I would say it's better for you, and it's easier for you, infant. It's easier for you to follow one school of law than mixing and matching, because it can be confusing, it can cause problems, it can cause a person to fall into the desires, it can cause a few issues. So it's better for you to stick to one school of law. Whichever one you like, no problem. Whichever one you've learned in, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, no problem. It doesn't have to be Hanafi. It could be Shafi'i, it could be Maliki. Whichever one you know, you should follow that school of law. If someone was to borrow from another school of law, would they be sinful? Per se? I don't think so. Especially because the other school of law is valid. But if it leads to them following their desires and easy, becoming lazy in deen, then that will become sinful. That will become blameworthy and sinful. Does that make sense to you guys, yeah? So anyway, I've already dug myself quite a big hole, so I don't, inshallah, I hope I don't, no, I'm exaggerating. Inshallah, it's all fine. What I'm saying is good. What I'm saying is fine, inshallah. May Allah accept from all of us and allow for us to take good from it and allow for us to become closer to Allah from it and allow for us to pray more salah and our salawat on time and our salawat properly as a result of this knowledge that you're acquiring. Yes?
If you're a traveler, would it still be obligatory to pray in the mosque? Or
No. Praying in the mosque is obligatory according to some scholars, not all. It is sunnah mu'akkad, emphasized. Sunnah. But yes, if someone takes the opinion that it's obligatory, then alhamdulillah, that's going to help them to go to the masjid. I'm not going to go and stop that person. But if you're traveling, then you would not be. Because it's going to be extremely difficult for you to find a masjid. Sometimes. Not all times, but sometimes. Okay. Any other questions, brothers? Khalas, tomorrow's hadith class. Remember that, inshallah. Try to attend. And encourage others. If you feel like this class is beneficial, I know a lot of people, like right now, there's about 18 to 20 people watching online. Good for you, but being in person is much better. Okay, you can ask the questions. Actually, on that note, let me see if there's any questions in the chat section here. Sometimes we'll ask some question here. They're so comfortable and so lazy that they want to ask questions on on YouTube comment section. Khalas, no problem. I think everyone's understood what we said today. Jazakumullah khairan. Tomorrow is our hadith class. Try to join, try to come. We have a women's hall here. Please come. Make use of that. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.